There are moments in our lives when worry feels like an unwelcome companion that refuses to leave. We wake up with a knot in our stomach, uncertain about our future and unsure of how to find true rest for our souls. We try to push our worries aside, but they persist, slowly draining our hope and energy until it seems that peace is out of reach. Yet in these challenging times, there's a powerful reminder that we do not have to face our fears alone. We do not need to exhaust ourselves with endless anxiety or carry a burden that was never meant to be ours. In the midst of our troubles, when our hearts tremble and our minds spin with anxious thoughts, there is a gentle voice that calls us to find refuge in a presence far greater than our own limitations. This presence offers a place of safety and a promise of divine support. When we discover what it truly means to dwell in God's presence and surrender our cares, we unlock a source of comfort that surpasses anything the world can offer. It is like stepping out of a storm into the warmth of a peaceful shelter. Even when we feel weak, worried, or weighed down by life's pressures, there's a refuge that does not depend on our own strength. There's a power in acknowledging that we do not stand alone in the face of uncertainty. For the Creator of the universe intimately cares about our well-being. This message is not a distant story, but a living reality that speaks directly to your heart, right where you are, in whatever chaos or confusion you might be experiencing. Today, I want to invite you to embrace the freedom that comes when you decide not to carry the load of worry by yourself. Instead, remember that you can rest in God's loving presence. His invitation is open, and His promises remain steadfast, offering you a hope that transcends every obstacle or trial you might face. No matter how heavy your burdens may feel, there is a grace that can lift them. No matter how dark your situation appears, there's a light that shines stronger. As you listen, allow your heart to open and your mind to be transformed by the simple yet profound truth that you do not have to worry when you stand in God's presence. This truth can renew your perspective, restore your hope, and fill you with the kind of peace that no circumstance can shatter. Stay with me as we journey through the depth of this promise and uncover how trusting in God's presence can change your life in ways you might have never imagined. There is an inherent tendency in our human nature to worry. We are wired to look ahead, to plan, to assess risks, and to prepare for possible futures. On the surface, these are strengths that help us navigate the complexities of daily life. However, this same ability to think ahead can become a source of anxiety when we carry the weight of tomorrow on our shoulders. Worry becomes an uninvited occupant of our minds when we lose sight of a deeper spiritual truth. We are not alone, and we are not meant to handle life's challenges in isolation. The presence of God is an ever-abiding reality that stands above our limitations. It is not a concept limited to places of worship or times of prayer. It is a constant invitation to remain connected to a source of infinite love, wisdom, and compassion. When we learn to shift our focus from our immediate fears to God's sustaining presence, we discover a profound sense of relief. It is as if we have opened our clenched fists and finally allowed ourselves to breathe freely. Yet this shift is not always easy. We live in a world that prioritizes independence and self-sufficiency, so we might feel ashamed to admit that we are anxious or uncertain. We might try to hide our concerns, pretending that we can handle everything alone. But there is no shame in acknowledging our limitations. There is remarkable freedom in recognizing that God's power is magnified in our weakness. There is a moment in spiritual life, often unplanned, when we come to the end of ourselves and realize how desperately we need divine guidance. This recognition is not a sign of failure. It is the beginning of liberation from the bondage of anxiety. If you have come to such a moment, you have also come to a place where you can experience the fullness of God's presence. Worry can be tricky because it often starts with seemingly small concerns that fester until they become overwhelming. Maybe you begin by worrying about your finances or your health. Then these worries spread to your family, your friends, and your future. The more you try to control every detail, the more you feel out of control. Eventually, you might reach the point where you are unable to rest or enjoy life because you are constantly consumed by thoughts of what could go wrong. It can feel like you are walking in darkness, guided only by the fear that the next step might bring disaster. In the midst of these spiraling thoughts, God's presence stands as a steady light that never dims. When you choose to focus on His presence, you are reminded that life is more than a string of worst-case scenarios. There's a divine plan unfolding around you, and you are invited to be part of it. This shift in perspective does not guarantee that every situation will turn out exactly as you wish, but it frees you from the illusion that you must navigate every hardship by yourself. Instead of feeling trapped by fear, you are drawn into a loving relationship with the one who understands your struggles more intimately than anyone else ever could. Surrendering your worries in God's presence is not an act of passive resignation. It is an active decision to trust a higher wisdom and to lean on a strength beyond your own. This trust is built through daily encounters with the divine, through prayer, reflection, and meditating on the promises that have guided believers for centuries. In these moments, you align yourself with a faith that declares, "Though the world may shake, my anchor is secure." It takes courage to give up control, even though that control is often an illusion. We might cling to our worries, convinced that if we let them go, we might somehow lose our sense of responsibility or preparedness. Yet genuine responsibility includes the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to release our tight grip. Handing over our concerns to God does not mean we stop caring about the important things in life. It means we allow ourselves to be led by a guiding hand that sees the bigger picture. Sometimes the reason we struggle with worry is that we do not feel worthy of God's attention. We might think we are too flawed, too broken, or too insignificant for the Creator of the universe to care about our struggles. But this perspective overlooks the limitless compassion that is extended to all. God's presence is not reserved for those who appear perfect on the outside. It is offered to every weary heart that seeks genuine relief. In recognizing our imperfections, we actually open the door to deeper intimacy with God. We stop pretending we can do it all, and we start allowing divine love to fill the empty spaces in our hearts. Another important truth is that God's presence reaches us even in the midst of our greatest failures or our most painful experiences. Sometimes worry emerges because we carry regret or shame about past choices. We fear that our mistakes disqualify us from receiving comfort or guidance. Yet time and time again, stories of redemption show that God uses the broken parts of our lives to shape something beautiful. In His presence, the scars that once seemed like disqualifications can become testimonies of grace. This realization can transform our relationship with worry, because we see that even if the worst happens, we are never beyond the reach of divine mercy. We might lose a job, face illness, or watch relationships unravel, but God's sustaining grace remains a constant invitation to find peace in the storm. Embracing God's presence also means learning to be still. In a society that glorifies constant motion and endless productivity, stillness can feel uncomfortable or even counterproductive. We equate busy schedules with importance, and we fear that slowing down will leave us behind. Yet it is in the quiet moments, when we pause long enough to listen, that we experience the calming voice of the divine. Stillness is not laziness. It is the posture of a heart that is willing to listen and ready to trust. When you allow yourself to be still, you make space for God to speak to the deepest parts of your being. You step off the treadmill of anxious thoughts and let your soul find its rhythm in the gentle pace of divine presence. This choice to pause is a radical act of faith, especially in moments when the world around you screams for urgency. But it is precisely in those moments that stillness becomes a shield against the flood of anxiety. The more you practice this discipline, the more natural it becomes to rest in God's presence, instead of rushing to fix every potential problem on your own. As you deepen your understanding of God's presence, you begin to see that worry is often rooted in fear of the unknown. We want to see the entire path ahead, to know how every challenge will resolve, and to have guarantees before we take a step. But faith invites us to walk forward, even when the whole path is not illuminated. The confidence we have in God's presence assures us that we do not need to see the end of the road to trust the one who leads us. This faith may not remove every obstacle, but it shifts the burden of responsibility off our shoulders. We recognize that our finite understanding is complemented by an infinite perspective that orchestrates the unfolding events of our lives. This assurance does not promote recklessness or indifference. It promotes a sense of balance where we do our part in alignment with wisdom and love, while trusting God for the outcomes we cannot control. Another dimension of releasing worry in God's presence involves cultivating gratitude. When we fixate on our problems, we lose sight of the blessings and miracles that exist all around us. Worry narrows our view and makes us blind to the many ways we are already cared for and provided for. By intentionally redirecting our hearts to gratitude, we open our eyes to the evidence of God's goodness. This shift in focus can be as simple as recognizing the gift of a new day, the kindness of a friend, or the beauty of nature. Every act of thanksgiving fortifies our awareness of divine presence, reminding us that there is always more to be grateful for than we initially see. When we choose gratitude over worry, we train our minds to look for the positive facets in every situation. And over time, this habit rewires our perspective to rest more easily in assurance rather than anxiety. In learning not to worry, we also learn to connect more deeply with others. Fear often isolates us, making us feel as though we must bear our burdens alone. But the reality is that we are designed to live in community. In God's presence, we find not only a direct connection to the divine, but also a renewed capacity to share our burdens and joys with those around us. We discover that other people can become channels of God's comfort and wisdom in our lives. Conversely, we can become instruments of peace for others. When we are free from the shackles of worry, we have greater emotional and spiritual capacity to extend compassion, understanding, and support to those who are hurting. We become reflections of the peace we have received. This dynamic of community reminds us that God's presence is not confined to solitary moments. It is also manifest in the loving interactions between human hearts. Sometimes we believe that living without worry means never facing hardship, but that is not the case. Trusting in God's presence does not guarantee a life without trials or challenges. There will be tears, setbacks, and disappointments. However, the difference lies in the way we respond to these hardships. When we live in the consciousness of God's presence, our perspective transforms. We see every trial as an opportunity for growth, and every challenge as a chance to witness divine faithfulness. Even in the most difficult times, peace can reside in our hearts when we know we are not battling alone. Some of the most inspiring stories of faith are those in which people have endured unimaginable hardship, yet have come through with a deeper sense of trust and hope in God's abiding presence. Their struggles did not vanish, but they discovered that even in darkness, they were never truly forsaken. These testimonies remind us that there is a spiritual strength that transcends our fleeting emotions. It is grounded in a relationship with the one who never leaves us nor forsakes us. In this journey, humility becomes an essential virtue. Humility recognizes that we do not have all the answers and that our human efforts have limitations. It opens the door for God's sovereignty to guide us in places where our understanding fails. When you humble yourself in God's presence, you are not demeaning your value. Rather, you are recognizing that your life is part of a bigger narrative, and you trust that the author of that narrative is working for your ultimate good. This posture of humility frees you from the impossible task of controlling everything. It reminds you that there is a higher authority who sees the end from the beginning. Learning to live without worry in God's presence is a continual process. It is not something you achieve once and then maintain perfectly. You will have moments of doubt and times when fear returns. You may catch yourself slipping into old patterns of anxiety. When that happens, remember that the essence of this journey is grace. You are invited again and again to return to the place of trust. Each step of faith deepens your roots, making you more resilient. Over time, you notice that fear has less power over your decision-making. You become more attuned to the gentle, comforting whisper that says you are loved, cared for, and never alone. In this process, a vital aspect is learning to listen to the inner voice that resonates with divine truth, rather than the outer voices of chaos. The world's noise can be deafening, telling you to panic at every turn. But when you regularly spend time in stillness and reflection, you develop a keen awareness of the presence that transcends the world's anxieties. This internal anchor gives you the discernment to see beyond momentary turmoil and trust in a deeper reality. Even in seasons of silence where it seems like prayers remain unanswered, faith nudges you to believe that God's presence has not withdrawn. Sometimes, silence is a sign of deeper work happening in your heart, cultivating patience, perseverance, and a reliance on the unseen rather than the visible. Another powerful tool against worry is the conscious practice of love. When we set our hearts on loving God and loving others, we shift our perspective from our own fears to the needs and hopes of the people around us. Worry tends to be self-centered, drawing all our attention to our own potential losses or failures. Love, on the other hand, is outward-focused. It compels us to serve, to give, and to reach out. In doing so, we often find that our anxieties loosen their grip because we are no longer fixated on ourselves. God's presence becomes tangible in acts of compassion and kindness, reminding us that there is a greater purpose than our individual concerns. The more we practice love, the more we tap into a source of divine energy that dissolves fear. Worry cannot withstand the power of genuine love, because love reminds us of our value and our place in a broader community of souls. When we genuinely love others, we also learn to accept love for ourselves, recognizing that we are cherished by God, flaws and all. In that realization, the seeds of anxiety cannot easily take root. There's also an element of spiritual warfare that many believers recognize. Worry can be seen as a tactic that diverts our energy away from faith, hope, and love. It can become a mental battlefield where doubts and fears dominate our thoughts. In response, abiding in God's presence is akin to taking refuge in an unassailable fortress. We do not fight anxiety with our own limited strength. We entrust our minds and hearts to the unwavering security of the divine. Overcoming worry is not about denying the reality of life's problems. It is about acknowledging a higher reality that offers peace in the midst of chaos. Every time we turn to God in prayer, meditation, or silent reflection, we reinforce our connection to that higher reality. Our reliance on external circumstances for our peace diminishes, and our reliance on divine companionship grows stronger. This transformation can occur subtly, through consistent small acts of trust, or in dramatic moments of revelation, when we suddenly realize that we have been upheld all along by grace. You may find it helpful to contemplate the numerous scriptural promises that affirm God's unwavering presence. These have served as anchors for countless individuals through generations of trials. They remind us that we are cared for far more intimately than the flowers of the field or the birds of the air. Yet even those receive daily provision without worry. Such promises are not meant to be vague platitudes. They are living words that can reshape how you see yourself and how you navigate the storms of life. When these promises become a reality in your heart, your mindset naturally shifts from anxiety to assurance. Each day, you learn to release fear bit by bit, like letting go of a heavy load you were never meant to carry. This does not make you irresponsible or naive. It makes you a pilgrim of faith, journeying with the knowledge that you are guided by a hand far more capable than your own. As you walk this path, you begin to sense that the presence of God is not just beside you, but within you, empowering every step you take. The more you dwell on this truth, the more you internalize it, allowing it to penetrate every aspect of your life. Eventually, you find that worry no longer has the same power to disturb your peace. You become resilient, capable of standing firm in the face of adversity, not because of any innate superiority, but because you are anchored in a love that cannot fail. This is the essence of living without worry in God's presence. A life marked by trust, peace, and the relentless assurance that you are never alone. In a world where uncertainty seems to outpace our capacity to cope, discovering what it means not to worry in God's presence is a treasure. From the stirring call to surrender our burdens to the gentle invitation to be still and recognize a love that transcends our fears, we find an unshakable foundation to stand upon. This is not a fleeting emotional high or a false promise that challenges will vanish. It is a life-changing reality that offers a steadiness nothing else can replace. When you open your heart to divine presence, you enter into a relationship that reminds you who you truly are and who God is. That relationship is marked by care and compassion, by mercy and grace, by wisdom that knows your every need. It transforms your outlook, rewiring your reaction to uncertainty from one of panic to one of patience, from one of discouragement to one of determined hope. In choosing to let go of anxiety, you are not dismissing life's struggles. Rather, you are choosing to approach them with an assurance rooted in a source far greater than yourself. This assurance lifts you above the waves of fear, giving you the courage to keep going, even when the path is unclear. It grounds you in the knowledge that your worth does not depend on your circumstances or successes, but on a love that has no bounds. As you finish hearing these words, consider the gift that God's presence offers you today. It is a calling to leave behind the restless cycle of worry and to step into a deeper awareness of divine companionship. It does not require perfection. It only asks for a willing heart and a humble spirit. Embrace the promise that you do not have to be weighed down by your fears. Know that there is a hand extended toward you, ready to steady you in every storm. Accept that gift and let it fill your mind with peace and your heart with renewed courage. As you move forward, remember the simple yet powerful truth that you are loved, you are seen, and you are always held in the tender care of God's presence. Let that truth dispel your worries and anchor your soul in hope that endures. Amen.